Note the disclaimer.
So are different kinds of monsters like different races, or are they like completely different species? You've got different numbering of eyes, some with wings. I just want to know what the rules are here.
Well, since I don't have the time to make up a monster-based Punnett square, I'm just going to say that they are completely different species. But answer me this. Is it really important to your enjoyment of the movie that you need this answered?
Frighten Elementary is one of presumably many shameless scare puns that we will see throughout the film.
Mate, you're sitting down to watch a movie called Monsters University. You're supposed to expect monster puns.
We're cousins.
Again, not sure of the genetics going on here. Is fur a dominant or recessive trait?
Like it matters.
We're entering a very dangerous area.
Which is apparently okay to bring a school group of children to.
And this would be a valid sin if it weren't for a safety line keeping the kids off the scare floor.
This is where we collect the scream energy to power our whole world.
Between this movie and the other Monsters movie, there's never been a clear explanation as to how it's collected. Are they just collecting sound? Why does human scream produce this energy and not monster scream? This all seems very complicated when they could just capture a bunch of human children and make them scream for a while into a large machine. Oh, wait, that's the plot of the other movie. Carry on.
Sounds like you're suggesting Randall's scream extractor was a good idea. Which is a horrifically dumb thing to suggest.
The right stuff style heroes walk cliche, which also appeared in Monsters, Inc. If you rip off your own ripoff, does that make it new?
Remember what I said in the previous video about Jeremy not understanding the difference between a ripoff and an homage? Yeah, this is only further proof of that.
I learned everything I know from my school, Monsters University.
Roll credits?
I wouldn't if I were you, because the title refers to the film's setting.
Mike going over the line.
Mike knows not to go over the line because they said it like 4 times in the last 3 minutes. So if he's clearly going to break the rules, why would he not try to sort of hide?
Wait a cotton-picking minute. Now you mention the safety line? But didn't 4 sins ago? That's inconsistent as all hell, and you're getting a doubled-up sin for that.
I thought I heard something.
That dad didn't look around for 2 more seconds and say, I don't remember buying our son a blue alligator skin jacket.
I can't imagine every parent remembering what they buy for their kids. Plus, there's the fact that they heard a noise, rushed to check on their kid, and found nothing that would cause any alarm. They're not going to spend ages combing through the room to see what's out of place, while little Johnny here is trying to sleep.
So after the monster collects the scream, he just casually walks out of the room through the closet? And no kid in the history of scream collecting has found this to be weird?
I mean, maybe? But even if they did try to investigate it, the portal would already be closed and powered off, turning it into your garden variety wardrobe. It's not like Narnia.
There are trading cards for the best scarers, who are essentially factory workers. This monster society is pretty big on communist propaganda.
Well, as CinemaSins points out, this is actually capitalist propaganda, primarily due to the commercial production of these cards similarly to baseball cards.
What are the suitcases carrying? It's well established that no one in this world wears clothes, except for an occasional shirt, hat, or jacket, which brings up this question.
Okay, instead of subjecting you to the horrors of the second part, I'm just gonna paraphrase JXE here and say questions aren't sins. Secondly, it's actually far better evidence that many residents here actually do wear clothes. The Greek Council, Professor Knight, Dean Hardscrabble, several Uzma Kappa, Raw, Omega Raw, and Python Nu Kappa members, and if we want to take the first film into consideration, Mr. Waternoose and Celia. However, some aren't as required, like with Mike, so he may have other things in his suitcases and backpack, like for example, his stuffed toy. Thirdly, Jeremy comes up with an MA-rated monsters movie that no one wants to see.
Who's that monster throwing that giant frisbee to? Was it the one other 50-foot monster in the school?
Yes! Wait, what's the problem here?
Also, how many items are scaled up for the giant monsters? She certainly can't attend any classes in buildings or sit in chairs.
You would be correct here, but what we see is different styles of campus for different monsters, like an underwater class we see later. So a giant campus on the school grounds wouldn't really be too much of an issue.
Also, I know this is a universe filled with monsters, but this is the only giant we've seen between both of the films Pixar's made about the monster world.
Except that is a blatant lie, as in the first one we see a behemoth of a monster named Ted who Mike and Sully converse with on the way to work. And in this film alone, there's a giant slug-like being on the football field, and the librarian during the sneak challenge in the scare games.
It looks like they're just making normal doors. How do they know what the doors are supposed to look like to match up with the closet door in the human world? Is it the door that's special, or the apparatus that holds the door? There's a lot missing here.
Well, like Luke and Vader both said, this isn't relevant to the story in this movie. The filmmakers aren't going to hold your hand through this journey. You'll have to make it on your own.
It seems like your physical appearance is indicative of what social club you should join, which is something that their universe and our universe have in common. That's racist.
Well, while CinemaSins removed a sin for this, and I can definitely see why,
This sin is not only a pretty good point, but also really well delivered.
I wouldn't entirely say that was true for the Improv Club fellow or the Greek Council advertising the scare games. Plus, this scene would seem to suggest that it's physical features that determine your future club membership, regardless of talent or skill level, and not actual race like Jeremy's implying here. I mean, take this with a grain of salt, because I've never actually been to university, but I can tell that there's definitely a lot of cliques and clubs around each campus, and whichever one you feel you best fit into would be the one you're stuck with. So, not really about race, but this one is definitely about species.
The things humans have that allow them to comfortably wear glasses do not apply to Randy, and many other monsters that we will see later. Yet his glasses are staying up, no trouble.
What's your point? This world is already fictional, and despite them having similar concepts, valuables, and language to us, they don't have to have things be exact.
Yeah, but lose the glasses. They give it away.
And that's how Randy got his devious squint, by foregoing vision correction.
Mike does the same thing with his retainer when practicing scaring in a mirror. You want to point that out to Sin too?
How many college-aged kids still have retainers that they need to wear all the time? I guess this is an effort to make him look younger and dorkier. But I've seen several other monsters that have a greater need for an orthodontist, like this guy.
Oh. Dude, I was joking in that previous sin. Besides, Luke has the best explanation for this.
Well, it's not unrealistic since I wear a retainer at night when I sleep, and I don't need to wear it during the day, and I'm still a college student.
Dean Hartscrabble is one of the few monsters that gets to wear clothes.
He says, while showing Professor Knight standing right behind her. Not to mention there's the Raws, Eeks, Pinks, Jocks, Hiss, the Greek Council, and... Wait a minute, I've said this already.
Sullivan. Like Bill Sullivan?
The scarer? Yeah, he's my dad.
Sullivan is a very common name. This was a roll of the dice.
While I do see where JXE is coming from in this instance, I'm gonna have to side with Vader here and say that we only know of 2 Sullivans in this world, and only one of which we actually see.
I'm sorry. Should I keep going?
No. Mr. Sullivan's covered it.
All Sully did was roar. He didn't answer the professor's question. My theory is that the professor has a monster equivalent of a hard-on for Sully.
Jeremy says boner. Not to mention the professor was asking about the properties of an effective roar, and Sully demonstrated that perfectly, even if he interrupted Mike trying to answer it.
This monster, explicitly called a pig, isn't much bigger than Mike, and appears to not be anthropomorphic. So they could theoretically, eat it? What are the rules?
One irrelevant question about fauna does not a sin make, Mr. Scott.
Is this pig also half spider? Or can pigs just run up walls in this universe?
Another question. Well, this time I can answer it for you. This is exactly what the movie is saying, since we also see a 2-headed pigeon with a tongue that acts like a frog's. And yet this is the only one you sin here. Also, proofreading error.
Just in case you didn't get that Randy was lame, the animators of this film used his cupcakes against him by writing lame across his face.
Admittedly, I did miss this, as even though I'm in an English-speaking country, the DVD version I have has smiley faces on the cupcakes. But that's not what I wanted to point out. What I did want to point out is that he wrote "by" into the script instead of "by," as well as forgetting the quotation marks on each side of lame here.
For the record, I would probably hang out with the guy at the party who had the cupcakes. I love cupcakes.
Fair enough, and understandable, but you might be on your own there.
Mike makes a quick decision to make an impossible shot that would in no way work in a real-world situation. You might be saying to yourself, well, this is a college filled with monsters. This isn't the real world.
Hey! That's my line!
Slow down, Squirt!
I really don't think that this guy can call Mike Squirt. They are the same size.
Yeah, nah, Chet. This little crab guy here, he's taller than Mike.
Is this their version of beer pong? Get the gooeyest guy wasted so that we can play tic-tac-toe on his chest with our ping-pong balls? That seems a lot more complicated and difficult than the way we do it.
Jeremy invents a problem out of thin air cliche.
Where did this guy come from? I feel like I would have noticed him at the line of scrimmage. Also, having a giant blob on your football team that is impossible to take down is colossally unfair.
Hang on. Shouldn't this have tipped you off that there are more giant monsters in this world? And if so, shouldn't you have deleted that previous sin? These are the people you made famous? The patients are running the asylum!
Dominant silverback gorilla.
How do they know what silverback gorillas are? Do they have silverback gorillas in the monster world?
One irrelevant question about fauna does not a sin make, Mr. Scott. The sinquel. But since you asked, it's most likely that they would have gorillas in this world, or probably even learned about them while doing research on the human world, since they know what lions, snakes, ladybugs, and Santa Claus all are.
One frightening face does not a scarer make.
Isn't this entire course in scaring basically just an acting class?
As a former thespian, I am shocked and appalled. And besides, there's more to it than that. Mike was studying his little green soccer ball-shaped behind off to learn every pose to scare a child with. Sully, however, thinks he can only rely on one face, which in turn bites him on his furry blue behind as he later gets removed from the scaring program.
A roar wouldn't make him scream, it would make him cry, alerting his parents, exposing the monster world, destroying life as we know it.
Has the monster world, which is full of modern-day technology, always had this ability to jump into the human world for power? Or was there a monster version of prehistoric times?
What you lack is something that cannot be taught. You're not scary.
Granted, she's just saying what someone should have said to Mike long ago, but her inspiration seems to be just because they broke her scare canister. The inspiration is further supported by the fact that she had to have let him into the school in the first place. She's the dean.
Okay, there's a few problems with this sin. One, there is other classes in the school, and she just assumes that he was going into the Scream Can design class or the door workshop instead of the scare campus. Secondly, people have been telling Mike that he isn't scary and doesn't belong on a scare floor for almost all of his life, including a student at Mike's primary school right at the beginning. So he's there to try to prove them wrong. Thirdly, Hardscrabble didn't just decide he wasn't scary on a whim. She asked him to demonstrate a scare that he would have used on a kid with astrophobia, but stopped him before he could have the chance to show her, merely because what she was watching was a little green beach ball with one eye attempting to be something that he clearly doesn't seem to be. In a sense, she was underwhelmed with his attempt. Sure, she may have been cross about him and Sully knocking over her record-breaking canister and destroying it, but it seems like this was building up for the longest time. And for making me say all of that, that's 2 sins plus the 3 individual ones I would have given you for each point.
30 years in the textile industry and then old Dandy Don got downsized. Figured I could throw myself a pity party or go back to school and learn the computers.
This is too real. Painfully real. Is too real a sin for a cartoon monster movie?
Why should I even bother answering since I know you're not going to listen? I mean, come on, you sin movies for not being realistic, and then when they are realistic, you sin them again. So this is just an inconsistency sin, mixed with the bane of JXE's existence, questions.
Shouldn't a monster universe have a human creature on their Lisa Frank-style notebooks? A unicorn griffin thing probably lives out there somewhere.
Is that really a question you need answering? Do you really need one of us to hold your hand through all of this? Well, this is not something the movie needs to explain to you, since it isn't important.
Human children are toxic, and anything they touch is toxic.
We know this isn't true because of the other movie. But if everyone believes this, how are any of the monsters able to move around these kids' rooms without freaking out? They clearly touch things in the room that the kid has touched.
Except that isn't true, given the evidence between the 2 movies. In fact, here's a montage to show you what I'm on about. Therefore, This is all an obstacle course for them. Sure, the only things they touch are the floor, the door, and the walls, and yes, the kids may have touched them as well, but the toys are generally what they try to avoid because the kids handle them more.
I'm gonna beat you over that finish line.
You're ready to eat my dust.
Sully and Mike think that in a team race, it's best they race each other instead.
No Sherlock. These two are unaware that the whole team needs to win the race, and they are rivals at this point, which causes them both to lose because they think they can do it themselves. You're just pointing out that this is a character flaw of both Mike and Sully that the movie has already acknowledged.
Hey, second place ain't bad!
I find it totally ridiculous that Know-It-All Mike thinks that just because he and Sully crossed the finish line without the rest of the team, they finished the race.
See the previous sin.
The use of illegal protective gel is cause for elimination.
I would check the other teams for protective gel also. I'm having trouble believing that only Uzma Kappa members were the only ones that ran into the spiky balls.
That's because they weren't. They show an Eek member running into an urchin as well.
Also, if you're a frat, why would you cheat when you have the frat that is so obviously bad that they're going to lose? All you have to do is not come in last. There are no points for first.
Oh, joy. Now we're back to sinning the film for being realistic. What a buffoon.
Oh, a ladybug!
For those of you keeping score at home...
Wait, whoa. Don't tell me. You're going to point out that ladybugs, like silverback gorillas, exist in the monster universe. Well, have I got news for you. I don't care.
The faculty at this school can get away with literally anything.
But before you go any further, you claimed there was only one giant monster in this universe, and yet here's another example of a giant monster.
The girls from the PNK sorority all look exactly the same when all the other monsters look extremely different from each other. Are they all sisters, or just extremely selective, or perhaps racist?
Well, I did a little digging, and no, they're not actually sextuplets. I'd probably just say selective, since they seem to get along well with other monsters on campus. But again, why is that wrong?
Does the school have no law enforcement or disciplinary entity at all? Because I'm sure this would fall in the extreme vandalism category.
Well, yes, they do have a security team there, as we see at the climax of the film, but the Raw's most likely weaseled out of the vandalism ruling by saying that it's for a charity auction between the paper and the t-shirts. In other words, Jeremy doesn't know how a hazing ritual works.
This sorority, which has been very skilled up until this point, is arbitrarily thwarted by this Avoid the Teenager challenge.
Narration.
Randy has an unfair advantage in the hide and sneak challenge because he can just turn himself invisible. There really is no need for him to even hide in the lamp.
Except he still has his Raw branded varsity jacket on, so since it would still be shown, he would have to hide instead of just turn invisible.
Apparently you only get caught in this game if you're just so shitty at hiding it looks like you're not even trying, because everyone knows what Sully looks like, and him lying on the ground like a bear rug should not be a good hiding place, but it did require a small amount of effort.
Okay, but that's just the monsters. Humans wouldn't know who Sully is, and the point of the challenge is to hide in plain sight, i.e. blending in with the furniture. That's why the Hiss sorority failed the challenge, because they didn't choose good hiding places and couldn't stay still long enough to not be noticed. Sully, acting like a bearskin rug, worked splendidly. The real sin should be that, given Mike is only green, he shouldn't have been able to blend in as a globe.
Tomorrow, each of you must prove that you are undeniably scary. And I know for a fact that one of you is not.
Just one? I feel like excluding Sully, Mike is the scariest of all the Uzma Kappa members. There's no reason for her to single Mike out when all the rest of them are not scary.
Boy, that's a misrepresentation and a half. Don, Squishy, and Terry all score incredibly well, proving they are just that scary. Art only got a moderate score, but still got into the scaring program at the end anyway, and Mike's was faked due to the settings being altered after Sully's go.
If they did the hide and sneak challenge on this field, Mike would clearly have the advantage, because he and the grass are the exact same color.
Aw, look at that! You can work out two things are the same color. What's next, Einstein? Ice is cold, swimming pools are deep, an animated movie is fictional. Any more pearls of wisdom exactly like that? Wow, that came off a lot meaner than it should have. I am so sorry.
I know everyone likes a good underdog, but why is no one suspicious that Mike got a perfect score? Everyone just seemed to accept that Mike was able to beat everyone else's score, including Sully's. No one is suspicious that maybe someone tampered with his machine.
Maybe because the camera was off after Sully finished his turn, and most students either wouldn't be able to see the control box or know what it does. As for why Mike got a perfect score, maybe they all thought it was his training, or that he had dug deep to find the scariest monster he could be inside of him, like Sully encouraged earlier. You want to know why questions don't count as sins? Because they have answers.
Why would you ever have settings like this? A scare is a scare, f***os. Who among these students pursuing a degree benefits from the easy setting?
This was established earlier during the semester's final exam in the scaring campus, and was set to the highest, as mentioned by Claire Wheeler, to encourage the students to give it everything they have.
The relationship between the monsters world and the humans world is so volatile. Why would a student's ID allow Mike to access the lab and operation of a door?
Simply because the students in this lab make and test the doors to check their validity.
Maybe I was just jumpy as a kid, but even if I saw a little green one-eyed thing in the middle of the night, I wouldn't want to approach it, even if it sounded like Billy Crystal.
That might be a you problem, bud.
But most of the time, I'm terrified.
How come you never told me that before?
We weren't friends before.
They weren't friends after the exchange at Monsters, Inc.? This question is not Mike's follow-up question.
Well, this is new. Instead of asking a question, he sins Mike for not asking one. Well, at the time, they never really got the chance to discuss it, since they were chased off by security at Monsters, Inc.
They forgot for a moment that they were being chased by toxic humans.
I'm with Vader here. A sin should have been removed for this scene. Not to mention, Mike has been hiding here for a while before Sully arrived, and Sully threw the Rangers off his trail.
If the canisters can be filled without being attached to the door, is attaching them really necessary? Also, it seems like adult screams are more powerful than kid screams. Why did this moment not teach them that scaring adults is more effective?
It's because it's a horrible idea. Granted, scaring kids is also a really horrible idea, but adults are more clever at this than kids are. Will spread the word about the monster world, and could potentially be carrying weapons.
Hardscrabble's letting us into the scare program.
Hardscrabble showed no mercy to Mike and Sully, who were able to power a door from the other side, which is apparently something no one has done before. But she gives the rest of Uzma Kappa a chance to be in the scare program because they were kind of scary.
You must have fallen asleep again, because you missed quite a fair bit. For one, Don, Terry and Squishy all posted incredible results in the Scare Simulator section of the Scare games. So that's why they all got accepted into the program. For another, Sully cheated in Simulator Challenge, and both he and Mike trespassed into the door lab and blew the door up.
You're the scariest bunch of monsters I have ever met. Don't let anyone tell you different.
And since they didn't show up in Monsters, Inc., that's the last time Mike and Sully ever saw these friends. Just like real college.
Sure. Let's just ignore for a second that the short Party Central exists. Also sinning reality again.
A red curb! I wonder how many meetings Pixar had to have about what the parking laws are here in Monster World.
Objection speculation, especially as this is not important to the story. So the video's title and thumbnail were complete lies. It says everything wrong with Monsters University in 15 minutes or less, but like JXE, CinemaSins, and Luke D all say, there's under 16 minutes worth of questions, reality sins, incorrect remarks, and pointing things out on the screen. And for those of you curious as to how I come up with the times on my videos, it's because I don't count the opening or ending sequences.
Careful, Mr. Sullivan. I was just warming up to you.
Does warming up to him include expelling him from school?
No, because that wasn't Hardscrabble's decision to do so. Sure, she may have said to Mike that if he lost the Scare Games, he would have to leave the university, and told Sully to be off campus by tomorrow after he owned up to the cheating. But as Roz mentions the night before they had to leave, that was for the university president to decide.
I'll have you know tampering with the mail is a crime punishable by banishment.
Lazily tossing in a reason for the abominable snowman's banishment.
Well, as Vader points out, you missed the true sin here, which is that they already met him in this scene, and yet in Monsters, Inc., they look at him like it's their first ever introduction. And that's not the only retcon here, as Mike tells Sully he's been jealous of Mikey's good looks since the 4th grade, yet Monsters University was their first meeting. And yet you never brought this up in the entire video. Now that is scary. I'll be watching you, Jeremy. Always watching. And with that, court is adjourned. Be sure to leave any more suggestions for CinemaSins sins down below, and I will see you all in the next video.